intimacy can be something from just giving, like, kissing to complete nudity to being raped.
And I know Gehraaiyan was your first film.
I've had a director धमकाओ an actor, intimacy coordinator क्या खड़े होके बीच में झंडा गाड़ेगा कि ना हम नहीं करने दे.
That's a great point.
Salman Khan turns around and says he will never be.
Oh my god.
They actually sleep with everyone. Like, no sex toys work for me.
Ladies, gentlemen and others, today we're going to talk about cinema in a way that we really have never delved into before. We're going to be talking to India's very first certified intimacy coordinator. I'm so intrigued for the episode ahead, so I'm going to remind you to make sure you review and rate the episode if you do really like it, because this conversation with Aastha Khanna is something I've been looking forward to for a while. Welcome to the pod, Aastha.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you could do this because Panchmi talked about you when she came on the pod a while ago, and I was so intrigued with the idea that we have someone who is, of course, India's first certified intimacy coordinator or director. What do we go with officially?
You can go with either. Director sounds nicer. Coordinator is more internationally accepted.
Okay.
Either is fine.
But it's such an interesting new concept in India, and I feel like the fact that you're the first certified one in the country makes me really happy because, like, more girl power. I love that. I'm going to ask you the cliche question of defining what that role means for someone who doesn't exactly know what an intimacy coordinator does on a film set.
Sure. Okay. So an intimacy coordinator, and yeah, answer it away. It's gonna sound a bit like it's gonna sound a bit like, yeah, definition.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. So an intimacy coordinator is basically somebody who liaises between producer and performer for scenes of intimacy. So what they do is they basically make sure that they're upholding the performer's consent and, like, choreographing scenes according to their boundaries, while also making sure that they're being able to achieve the director's vision and circumvent any possible lawsuits for the producers. Yeah, that's kind of the definition.
And also between the two or more co-actors.
Yeah. Between the performers, and then between performers, actors, performers, producers, directors, like that, all of these people. So essentially the reason it's called intimacy coordinator is because you're constantly coordinating and having
to negotiate.
Having to negotiate with all of the different departments, trying to make sure that the performers are at all points of time feeling comfortable for everything that's being shot.
Is there a lot of negotiation needed, or are they all usually on the same page?
No, there is negotiation needed. Yeah. I very rarely find situations where everything's so smooth that I feel like all I'm here to do is, like, distribute mint. That happens too. I've had those few instances where, like, everything's just perfect and it's just flowing beautifully, and nobody is, like, getting on each other's nerves. Nobody is, like, trying to push another person in spaces they don't want to be in. So in those, like, when that happens, when, like, when everything's going well, then all I'm doing on set is, like, take mint.
I love that. At what point of time does a filmmaker bring you on board? I'm asking you this because I've always wondered, especially as a teenager, I think I really wondered, that do you have to tell your cast in advance that, listen, there's going to be this. So do you come on board while the contract is being negotiated to then put these intimacy points in mind there? Or does it happen, do you come in only on a stage where you're on set saying, okay, I'm now going to coordinate the level of comfort you have while?
The ideal time to hire an intimacy coordinator is once the script has been greenlit and you've started hiring your HODs. So usually what will happen is once the script has been greenlit, the director will start hiring the costume designer, the production designer, the DOP, the director will start bringing all of these people on board. The producer will start hiring them and, like, putting them on the payroll. Around that time is the time which is it's ideal for an intimacy coordinator to be brought on board. At that point, what they can do is that they can chit chat with the casting director and make sure that for the scenes that have intimacy, the people that are being cast are already aware of the intimacy that is at play.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for instance, I mean, of course, we just spoke about how Panchmi spoke about me. I worked on a couple of projects with Panchmi, actually more than a couple. The great thing about having someone like Panch as a casting director is that the minute that she realizes that there is any kind of intimacy on script, She will make sure that in her casting call, before people are coming into audition, they're already aware of the fact that that role requires intimacy. And what kind of intimacy है? ऐसा नहीं कि just बोल दो वो intimacy है आपका, तो मतलब intimacy can be something from just giving, like kissing, to complete nudity, to being raped, to not heterosexual sexual or not heteronormative kind of intimacy. It can be a lot of things.
Yeah.
So what I love is, like, at that point you have certain casting directors that are already acutely aware of this, so then they'll do it on their own. So then the intimacy coordinator needn't necessarily be hired at that point. They can be hired at the point when, once the cast has been locked, then they can start doing the workshops with the cast and do all the coordination with the different departments, like with costumes and props and so on and so forth. But in cases where you don't have casting directors like Punch that will actually make sure of certain things, you will have certain casting directors that will just, like, because they want to get the bulk of auditions and better performances, they will not take into consideration that a particular actor may or may not be comfortable doing intimacy. So then there are people, and I've seen this especially happen with the secondary cast and the tertiary cast. Like, usually your hero and heroine people have checked with, and also the power dynamic is such. हीरो हीरोइन अगर ना बोलेंगे तो you're never gonna, मतलब कितना ही पुश कर लोगे, you will not like write the person off, right?
It's not a deal breaker.
If it is a deal breaker, it's a conversation the storyteller will have had in the very beginning.
Right.
Like, I mean, for instance, if I'm telling a story about a stripper in a film like Hustlers, right? If I didn't tell J-Lo that she's going to have to strip,
it's as simple as that.
It would just not make sense, right? But at that point also, an actor has read the script and they're aware of, like, what are the scenes that are coming to them. So that power dynamic can also be in a way where they can turn around and say, you know what, this I'm uncomfortable doing, and then the director can decide whether it's a negotiable or a non-negotiable.
But you're saying it's not just as much of a conversation with secondary and tertiary cast.
It isn't a conversation at all. Because more often than not, the way the casting system in that space works is that you're given this one tiny scene, you're not even given your script until you're brought on board. So you're given this one tiny scene that you've read for the casting director, then sometimes your director will meet you, or they'll just look at that one audition, sometimes just look at a photograph and be like, yeah, okay, just bring this person. And like, they're a day player, like 2, 3, 4 days on shoot or something like that, or like they're coming in for only a single episode on a web show or something. They're not given that amount of, like, autonomy, and also not given all of the information sometimes.
So what happens if they say no after they've brought on, after they've, like, let's say you've shot for 2 days and it's on the 3rd day that you're required to be intimate? How does a situation like that work?
So that's the issue, right? What ends up happening in most of these scenarios is, if they don't have an intimacy coordinator, they haven't had those conversations before, you're treading a very tight rope. And essentially the idea is that if I'm going to push this person into doing something that they're not comfortable doing, then I'm not letting them uphold their own consent. So I'm coercing them, essentially, right? As a filmmaker, if I'm forcing somebody to do something they're not comfortable doing because they're not giving active consent, they're scared they'll lose their job, that's harassment.
Has it ever happened? Because, like, I would imagine the person...
Of course it has happened. What was the whole Me Too movement about?
No, I mean now, recently, since in your experience.
Oh, in my experience also, I've noticed the tendency for people to want to do it. Because people don't fully understand what consent is. And, you know, समझाना बहुत difficult है. It's very hard to explain to a person who's a full-grown adult and has their own perspective of how woke they are and how upright they are as citizens. It becomes very hard to explain to them the nuances of something as simple as consent. I mean, I'll give you an example. For somebody who's a producer, they're like, I want this one actor to show her bare back. That's implied nudity. That's not even considered nudity in the real terms of, like, how we contractually define nudity. Bare back is basically all the way from your neck up to your tailbone.
Yeah.
Till just before your butt crack, right? The actor has refused to do it because they're like, no, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of doing it. But the producer has called me up and told me, see, they've put pictures of themselves up on Instagram where they have bare back. So what the fuck is this prude bullshit about all
But
of a sudden.
that's their choice.
Exactly. Now, how do you explain that to a producer when the producer turns around and says, no, you convinced them to do this?
Oh dear. And
So
you
then-
had to be in this position.
Yeah. And I mean, not just this position. I've had to be in positions where a director on set has told me, you have to convince this actor to show cleavage. She's wearing full clothes. I want to see cleavage. So I've had situations where a person on set has told me, no, we need to stuff someone's breasts because I can't see enough cleavage.
So that could also come to you under intimacy,
Of course.
coordinated jurisdiction.
Of course. Because see, in a scene of intimacy, if you have, I'll just give you a basic hetero scene of intimacy. Girl on top, boy lying down on his back. Girl is straddling boy, but you put your camera say on a top shot.
So you want
Right, you want to see cleavage, right? And then you want to see this like hair being flipped back, full body cleavage coming, like all of that stuff. But that's very male gaze,
Yeah.
right? And that's a whole other conversation to begin with. Some people can be like, yeah, okay, I'm comfortable to do it, I don't care, and they'll do it. And then there'll be some people that are not comfortable to do it. And then if you're putting them in that position where your director's like, no, but I'm going to shoot it like this only.
Oh my god.
Who the hell is this actor to tell me where I can put the camera and where I can't?
That
Like,
sounds
what do you do with that kind of
Sounds
thing?
like such a tricky situation to be in the middle of.
So that you're constantly, as an intimacy coordinator, whether you like it or not, doing a lot of conflict negotiation. And there are also, bear in mind, times as an intimacy coordinator, you have to give a realistic perspective even to the actor. Right? Like, you have to put it down straight for them. You're not an actor's entourage. You're hired by the producer. You're supposed to be on set to make sure that a particular scene is delivered a certain kind of way. So if if a particular performer reaches a conflict point where the director's losing their shit, the reason they're losing their shit is because time is running out, this actor suddenly decided to reverse consent or whatever, or not actually been very clear about what it was that they were comfortable or uncomfortable with me or with the director in the beginning, and then they've come out of it later. There are those situations also. Sometimes an actor will just wake up in the morning and be like, no, I don't like how my body is looking today. Technically, in an ideal world, it's their consent. They can choose not to shoot a scene. But there's a lot more at play there.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of money at play there. You're not feeling great about your body today. I understand. But you have to also understand that there is a whole set standing there waiting for you to...
With money spent and timelines in place. Yes, of course.
So it's not that ideal space. Sometimes you have to put it down for them. And sometimes you also have to tell them that, see, if you're reversing consent in this way right now, especially if people are series long people, when you're doing a web show and stuff like that. I've had a director dhamkaify an actor, agle season mein I'll write you out.
Oh dear.
Because we've had this conversation before. If now this is happening to you, then I'm sorry. What do I do?
Oh shit.
But they're not wrong also.
Yeah, I mean, but you feel bad because you're like, it's such a precarious position for everyone to be in. Because I'm sure the actor's also worried for like, getting written off. That also means the word of mouth of, the situation, and we all know how the entertainment industry works. That can be a very, to be able to take a stand and be there, it's also kind of like a little ballsy,
Yeah, no, so in those kinds of situations, more often than not, a smaller actor or a newer actor, they'll break. They won't stand for it. They'll be like, okay, fine, you know what, get it done with, get it over with, move on.
Yeah, because वो तो दब के रह जाएंगे ना if they're like new.
हाँ, but in that situation, again, as an intimacy coordinator, आप कितना झगड़ सकते हो? अब actor बोल रहा है, हाँ मैं कर लूँगा. Director बोल रहा है, इसको करने दो. Intimacy coordinator क्या खड़े होके बीच में झंडा गाड़ेगा कि ना हम नहीं करने देंगे.
नहीं मियाँ बीवी राजी तो
exactly. So in that scenario, you have to be very particularly careful about making sure that the performer's feeling comfortable through it in a way that, like, whatever they need, however they need it, how can you support them? You have to shift gears at that point. Because a lot of times this idea of consent and it being absolute is very idealistic. So it works 90% of the time, but then there is that 10% of the time when there is some form of overlap. So we put in stops for stuff like that also. So we put in stops like if the actor pulls away or like doesn't like reverses consent is the phrase we would use. in that situation, you can have a body double.
Okay.
Do that job.
Hmm.
So then the actor doesn't have to physically be the one doing that job. Consented in the beginning for it to have been done.
It's implied that they did it, but not actually did.
Yeah, it's taken that they have consented that their image being associated with that particular shot is not an issue.
Do the level of their comfort with intimacy, like for example, you used the term implied nudity earlier. Does the level of their okay get written into the contract? Is that a thing?
Yeah, so with intimacy coordinators working more and more in the industry, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in something called a rider, like an extra page, an addendum added to their contract, which very clearly states कौन सी scene में intimacy है, कितना intimacy है, कितना लंबा चलेगा scene, how elaborate is it, what is the vision for the scene. So it will say something along the lines of A has simulated sex with B, nudity involved for A is say rare below the waist or rare full body nudity. That kind of like very clear, like what part of the body is going to be visible on camera. Then go into like something like the scene length is 42 seconds approx.
Will we need to be shot over X days? Is that like
X days, within X days time, so on and so forth. It's just one page, but
Yeah.
clear.
It's good. Nah, it's good to have.
But what that does is actually it feels like a lot of paperwork for the production, but the production doesn't. A lot of productions don't realize that that's that one bloody page that saves them from everything, because that's the page that tells anybody and everybody from today till eternity. That page can come back and tell anybody and everybody that the actor was aware of what was asked out of them. They have signed that piece of paper. If they chose to reverse consent, that's a whole other conversation. Because see, at the end of the day, no law in any country, at least in our country, no law can stipulate you from reversing consent, even on contract, right? You can be contractually obligated to do something. The fail-safe of not being able to uphold that contract on your end can be some form of penalty. But to expect that you will be drawn to court because you chose not to do something, and like that somebody can ruin your life over it cannot happen. It's legally not possible.
And
like
also
there are so many loopholes around that.
Because it also kind of comes back to the idea that when we talk about consent at large, even, like a drunk person cannot give you consent. They are not in a state to give you consent. Like we were talking about earlier, like for example, even just the idea that so much of the content that we've grown up watching, for example, comes from the male gaze, and so much of it, I mean, it's changing now. I definitely like to say it's changing now, but I feel like so much of it has been skewed in one direction earlier. So it's nice to see that there are so many technicalities that are coming into it, which I won't say prevent. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't completely prevent a lot of the chaos around shooting intimacy. I'm sure there is some amount of chaos attached to it, and details. But it's nice to see that there is some kind of balance kicking into that space.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think, and when I speak about gaze often, people associate the intimacy coordinator's job role with fixing the gaze. When it comes to
but that's
shooting.
not, that shouldn't be in your
It's not. And that's exactly what I was getting to, which is that when you're working, you're trying to make sure that that person in that very moment, then and there, is feeling comfortable doing the job. And whatever the director's vision is, you want to serve that vision. So if that director's vision means that he wants to, he or she or they, whoever they are, want to shoot a hypersexualized item song, go for it. No problem. Hire me, so that I can make sure that that one girl that you're making stand in front of some 300 men is feeling comfortable doing what she's being made to do in that situation.
So you don't decide whether it's going to be from the male gaze or female gaze, or the level of, you're not there to judge by a moral compass, essentially.
Exactly. That is the crux of at least my standpoint, which is I cannot impose my moral compass on a filmmaker. What I can do is I can expect that eventually in time the audiences will get educated enough to then choose not to consume that. But for as long as the audience is consuming, the makers are making.
Yeah.
Who is anybody else to in that space stop somebody from telling a story the way that they want to tell it?
That's the fundamental, the freedom of being able to tell a story fundamentally comes from the
Correct.
idea of the
Correct.
way.
And then you choose what you want to consume, and you choose what you don't want to, what you don't stand with.
Yeah.
Like, I may have a lot of different political opinions about a lot of different films that come out. I can choose not to go and watch and spend that 400 rupees on that ticket. I can choose not to click onto it on my OTT platform and watch it and not waste my energy on it.
Yeah.
But can I just like blindly come out and be like, no, but you should censor this entirely? No.
No, so there's this is a very random example, but like for example, I think I was in like 10th or 11th grade when Kabir Singh came out.
Huh.
Big Karan Johar movie fan.
Same.
So and Kabir Singh is one of those movies that for whatever reason got bashed a lot when it came out. And I remember people like news reporters on channels asking Karan Johar, are you promoting like infidelity? And I thought that was, I mean, even at 16, I thought that was the most ridiculous approach to go in with. Because
100%.
when a filmmaker is making something, he's not saying this is good. Like, we're not saying it's good for terrorists to go into other countries. He's just making films based on what happens.
Yeah.
Right? And then when Gehraaiyan happened, I know Gehraaiyan was your first film as an intimacy director, right?
Yeah.
None of that happened to Gehraaiyan. On the contrary, I thought people saw it in the layered complexity, in the beautiful layers and complexities that the movie had. And I remember having this conversation with a friend where I was like, the audience is becoming smarter about what they want to consume. And even though like I've been a content creator for 12 years now, but I consume a lot of Bollywood. Okay, first of all, I'm a big Bollywood head, so I love to like analyze and get into characters, and this character would have been better if this was the arch and this is the wave, and I'm big on those kind of things. So when Gehraaiyan happened and these conversations were floating around, I was like, it's nice to see that at least the reactions were so much better than what they were, than what KANK got in 2006, 7, whenever that movie came out.
100%.
The audiences know what they want and know what they don't want, and that's awesome, because that is what everybody else then feeds off, right? And that's what they say, art inspires reality,
and vice versa. Yeah. So actually feeding off of that, when you think about it, when Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna came out, it was just it was just a lot of people feeling very angry about the idea of infidelity. And if you draw that to what society looked like at that time, when we were children, when we were in school, it was probably the first generation of us realizing that a lot of our co-peers were people that had single parents and were people that had divorces happening around them. Up until the generation before our parents, the concept of divorce was not just a very big deal. The concept of leaving your partner once you've chosen to commit to them was just considered to be an absolute no-go. Like, I would say the only possible explanation for why you could leave your partner would be if that they turned into an alcoholic, or like if they were beating the shit out of you, and like some strong male personality in your own home then finally took a stand and said, you know what, I'm not going to let my sister or my daughter have to go through this for their lives, and then bring them back. Like my Nani's generation, I may have heard of maybe one story of like Dur Dur Ka Kahani, where, you know, the concept of leaving your partner or falling in love with another partner to bahut dur ki baat. But leaving your partner was just not considered to be okay. It was a taboo. So then when you think of the mass around KANK ka time, it is people that were realizing that there were people in and around of them that were having extramarital affairs. It became a thing. I don't remember where, but this person just said it to me. They said the differences in gender identity of this generation is the infidelity and divorces of the previous generation in India.
That's very well put.
Yeah, it is that the fact that this generation has now taken that one step which is separate to how they view the world, how they view their lives, how they want to, love who they want to love, they want to be with who they want to be with, they want to identify as whoever they want to identify as and whoever they are. That concept was slightly different in that previous generation where people were like, I will not stick to live with somebody if they're making me unhappy, and I will move on to fall in love with someone else. And because that was still considered to be such a taboo situation, and like you'd still hear, she's like, I'm sure you've heard this in school when you were there.
I mean, 100%. I mean, I not even school. I even remember someone having this conversation around me last year in 2022. I'm talking about something that recent.
Yeah.
Where someone older was saying, oh my god, they got divorced and blah blah blah. And it was a relatively short marriage. And I was like, more power to her to walk out of a shitty situation. So
Yeah.
I feel like the lens that we're looking at things with has changed, and I would
100%.
much rather someone walk out of a shitty situation and hit that refresh button rather than sticking around because oh my god you have to, and हमने 7 फेरे ले रखे हैं या हमने कबूल है बोल रखा है, हमने I do बोल रखा है. No, this is one life, you get one life. Figure your shit out in this life.
Yeah, and if something's making you unhappy, life's too short to stick to it. But at the same time, essentially it is up to each person how they want to live their life. Like, I don't want to shame somebody who decided to stick through a sticky situation also.
Yeah, no, the idea is that choice needs to be yours on
Correct.
whatever you want.
Correct. So that idea is that shape-shifting in the way that the society is looking at relationships is the reason why, although a very polarized opinion even around Gehraaiyan, it was still far more accepted
Than KANK.
And again, KANK was a story about people that were married
Fair.
and had a child.
That's a great point.
And this was just basically about people that were still figuring out their own relationship. So, like in a society where until you're married, nothing matters. Accepting that people are cheating on each other until before they're getting married to somebody, it's still easier to digest with your morning cup of coffee than just the idea of like a man who has a 7-8-year-old son goes off and falls in love with this other person, right? Like, I don't know if a lot of people would still like the masses would still be readily
Take a story like that in.
ready to kind of take in a story like a KANK. However, when I saw KANK, I loved KANK. And I saw KANK as a child, like as a teenager, right?
I was 15.
And I loved KANK, and the reason I loved KANK was because throughout that entire thing, all I could tell was there are two people that are just trying to be happy, and they're trying to like find whatever it is that makes them happy, right? When the idea of all of these taboos in society and what is right and what is this moral compass that you need to be an upstanding citizen by upholding and all of that stuff was really not a concept for me at that point of time. It just made sense. You're unhappy, leave.
There weren't the labels in the structure in which we can have a conversation about it today, but on some level it resonated with, हाँ तुम खुश नहीं हो, अब क्या?
Ab kya? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
I mean, not to legitimify, if that's the word, like that infidelity is okay, but yeah, what I took away from it was that these two people happen to be in really miserable situations and happen to have found each other. I mean, I think they should have gone to their partners and told them after they had that sex scene with Where's the Party Tonight.
Yeah.
But I still love the movie.
Yeah. No, I love the film for another reason, that it is the reality of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when cinema can also hold up a mirror to society. As filmmakers, we're not meant to always create aspirational stories or stories that inspire people to be a certain kind of way. There are times that we have to hold up a mirror to society to show them, hey, you know what? The reason that we can tell the story on such a large scale is because it's happening in your next door neighbor's house. It's happening in the same building. It's happening with your cousins. It's happening with the people you're around. It's not something that is so unheard of that, that it's not like, it's relatable. You can tell when you see something, right? And I was actually having this conversation with Faye when I was on her podcast, which was around the only difference with when you're holding a mirror to society and as a filmmaker knowing that in holding the mirror to society, you're also not somebody whose vision is completely impartial. So the cognizance that you have to bring into that is that you don't glorify things that are potentially wrong.
Into Kabir Singh.
Yes. I love how you just, you picked up. I didn't have to say it.
No, I'll say it for you.
Yeah,
Into
I didn't
Kabir Singh.
I didn't have to say it. And the reason for that is, when an Arjun Reddy or a Kabir Singh glorify that character,
You make women romanticize that, which is the problem.
you make it so that men want to be him, women want him, and that's just a loop that you have to understand as a filmmaker, that audience that you are giving it to. Like, you and I have watched Kabir Singh. I'm sure you have watched. I watched it because I wanted to know what the whole
Yeah, same.
fuss was about.
Same.
When I watched the film, I didn't go back feeling like I liked the guy.
Oh no, I
Right?
loathed him.
And a lot of these people didn't go back feeling like they like the guy either. Which means that there is an intelligent audience that can tell when they look at a Joker and when they look at a Kabir Singh and when they look at an absolutely anybody who's an anti-hero character in the male lead of a film. They know that this is their story, but you're smart enough to know that that this is probably not what you want to be or what you want in your life, right? But there is that audience that doesn't know that. There is that audience that isn't that smart, which is that audience that you have to protect, because they are people that are idolizing the actor that is playing that character, and then therefore will do whatever it is. Like, for instance, we were discussing, Salman Khan turns around and says he will never be a villain. The reason he will never be a villain is because, or chooses not to be a villain, is because he knows his audience. He knows his audience is actually not smart enough to take into account that he is playing a bad guy. They're going to copy him blindly because of the superstar that he is to them.
Yeah.
So
That's
aware
responsible.
of that. He's aware of that, and so he chooses to be responsible about it. And he chooses to be the way that he is. And also because he has autonomy over all of the films that he makes and stars in. He has reached that point in his life as a celebrity, as a superstar, where the films that he makes are much smaller than who he is as a star. His films are not bigger than him. He's bigger than them. So in that situation, that responsibility is different. But all of this conversation leads back to the same thing. That responsibility lies with the maker and with the audiences. Nobody else, no third person, no censor board, no guidelines that platforms have, no intimacy coordinator can, beyond a certain point, stop a storyteller from telling a story and a consumer who wants to consume it from consuming. And with that in mind, it's very important to know how you can get in and do your job and leave without having your own private personal idea of what is right and wrong coming in the way of the job that you're doing.
Which kind of brings me to, what was your journey that led you to this point? Because being India's first certified intimacy director, there's no path specific to follow, especially in the Indian landscape I'm talking about. In fact, IMDb doesn't even recognize intimacy director as a legit, title.
Their additional crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, what brought you here? I know that you were an AD with Shakun Batra up until a point, and then of course you're working independently now.
Yes.
But what, of course, number one, want to throw in the fact that you instantly come across as someone who's very warm and can make someone comfortable. So I feel like that has to be a big qualification to be in this job. But what made you want to be here, or rather, how did you land up here? I would rather ask.
Okay, long story, so brace yourself.
Love it.
I was working as a normal AD, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Or came to Bombay after getting a film degree, wondering whether I wanted to be a director or a producer, but kind of figuring it out, right? And in that moment, what you do is that you take any job that comes your way, because you just want to be on a film set. So that's kind of how I got to the film space. And I was very protective of the space of being in the Hindi film industry, because I felt like a lot of people. I come from a completely non-film family, based out of Calcutta, middle class business family, have absolutely no contact whatsoever to anybody in the industry, and to the extent that we're huge film buffs, the whole Khanna family, and also the now married Bharadwaj family. Again, not got married into a completely so far out of the work that I do. It's not funny. There's civil servants based out of Jammu. The family that I've gotten married to, my husband's a lawyer. There's absolutely no connection.
But they're all like movie buffs.
All people that love watching films.
When you said non-movie, I was like, wait, you seem like quite a filmy. So
I'm full filmy.
Huh.
We grew up. I grew up watching at least one film a week, at the very least, and that meant like in the theater at the very least. So any film that came out, mom, dad, and I had to go watch it. But again, no connection whatsoever. So of course, our social scenes also like my parents' friends, my friends, the school that I came from, our relatives, everybody, they all had opinions about this industry. And the further you are away from it, the more there is just conversation around it's a bad industry, it's not safe for women, don't know what they do, all we hear about is them doing coke and partying and drinking, and all of these superstars have a lot of tantrums, and all they want to know is about the gossip. And
some of these things are true. We won't say which ones.
But some of these things are true to humanity, na?
That's
Matlab,
true.
like, who's not? It's not like every Punjabi wedding where people are getting drunk and puking is a Bollywood film set.
I never thought about it like that.
People are still getting drunk and people are getting drunk and doing coke in a hedge fund also.
Well, very true.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's society. There are going to be people that are going to do what they want to do, and the only reason that it comes more into the limelight is because the people that you're discussing are all people that you want to watch and hear and talk about all the time.
Famous.
Yeah,
Everybody loves talking about famous people.
Yeah. So owing to that, when I was coming to Bombay, and I told my father, I said, देखो मैं जा रही हूँ Bombay, मुझे काम करना है. And my dad was very supportive, and he said, yeah, you go do your thing, and if you ever need anything from me, if you need my support, I'm here. So I came and I started working, whatever. Everybody else around my parents constantly told my parents that it's not a good idea. It's a very bad idea. Single child, daughter, you're a businessman, you sent her off to Bombay to waste her time. So it was a very not accepted by, I've heard of many stories of my parents telling me, this is what they said. But it didn't faze them, which was a good thing, because they really protected me through it. They were like, she's going to do what she wants to do. And when the Me Too movement happened, I started fiercely fighting against people that had a lot of shit to say about the industry, at least in my own social area, because they would say, see, we told you it's such a bad place.
Where were you at this point in time? Had you already started working?
I was working 2018, 2017. The Me Too movement started in the US. 2018, it was very much a part of conversation in India. I started working in the industry when I did my first internship in the industry for a film called Bandapur, which was in 2014. So I was pretty much, and 2016 I moved to Bombay full time. So between 2016 and 2018 I was an AD. But nobody knew who I was, and I was still trying to move from one paycheck to the next. But anytime and every time I would go back home, there would be that conversation underlying, oh, come tell us some gossip about what's going on, which is this new star, do they actually sleep with everyone, like all of that stuff, right? And then beyond a point, you just have to be like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, they come to work, they're a punctual person, they do their shot and go back home, like, I don't care. Yeah, my point was, what somebody does in their personal life, I'm not that interested in, because I'm so close to them. I'm not watching them or seeing them in tabloids, right? I'm seeing them as normal people coming to set, doing their job and going home. What they do in their personal life is pretty much the same as what any other one of my friends or any of my colleagues would be doing in their personal lives, and I really don't care about the actor on set as any more than I do about my friend who just got cheated on, or just went through a little bit of a rough patch, or whatever it is, right? So I'm not going to come give you gossip about either. But at the same time, when the Me Too movement started, people started talking about how unsafe this place is to work, and how every man around is a predator, how so many stories have been silenced by people around them, by the pressures that people have been in. A lot of stories around, and rightly so, of experiences that were very unpleasant. But then people outside started talking shit about it and not taking it for what it is. That is, we need to find a way in which we can make workspaces safer, and a way in which we can teach people that in any kind of harassment is not okay. We were reaching a point where we were just talking shit about people and cancelling people. And some rightly so. But in some cases also just like victim shaming, and also going into this space of like, this is just not a great space to work in. And when they started like completely digressing from what the point was to the point of like, ये गंदी इंडस्ट्री है और यहाँ अपने बच्चों को भेजना नहीं चाहिए काम करने के लिए, and all of that stuff, that started really irritating me. And then the other thing that really irritated me was, while the West came up with intimacy coordinators as a way to create a space that would, like a braver space for people to have like a voice, and like to have somebody who actually takes over the department of intimacy, tries to make sure that, if there is any kind of like potential risk situations or like sexual harassment or whatsoever, or what have you, they can be minimized, like the risk can be minimized. What India was doing at the time was creating committees, or like posh committees, or like sexual harassment committees, and putting helplines out there for people to reach out in case they had already been harassed.
Do you mean to say there was no preventative measure?
There was cure, there was no prevention. And nobody was doing anything about prevention apart from running 3-hour-long seminars about how it's a bad thing to harass somebody. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? The person that wants to harass somebody will harass somebody. And a lot of times people don't even know what they're doing is harassment.
Because
it's just accepted.
Yeah.
It's normalized, it's accepted. People don't understand that it's harassment. Like, for instance, it's harassment to a trans person if you don't acknowledge their existence and just say, ladies and gentlemen, in a conference room where there is a trans person that is there.
Yeah.
Say for instance, right?
Yeah.
That is still harassment, because it is violence against, and like cancelling the fact that they exist, or like denying them their identity or whatever.
Or saying that only women with uteruses are women. Hello, J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Big fan, not a fan of your stance.
Yeah. No, or just saying that only women can give birth.
Oh my god.
Yeah. No, not only women can give birth. Men can give birth. Non-binary people can give birth.
Yeah.
Right.
It breaks my heart.
And not all women can give birth.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, it specifically breaks... I mean, the J.K. Rowling reference came in because it specifically broke my heart when her stance on, the trans community.
No, she was trying to be cheeky.
But she continues to maintain that stance. I mean, if you were trying to be cheeky, you got to know where to pull the plug and say, okay, I screwed up, I fucked up, this is where I back off. That's an ongoing issue, for lack of any other way of describing it.
Yeah.
I was very heartbroken because I'm one of the biggest Potterheads anyone will ever meet. I mean, I've read every book about 15 times and seen every movie about 30 times, and I'm that kind of Potterhead. So it kind of breaks my heart when coming into this context. Yeah. Sorry, digressing.
No, 100%. So in that kind of scenario where that can be considered harassment, right? To by and large anybody and everybody that was a Potterhead, who will suddenly feel like, what the hell?
Yeah.
There is also the idea of people not people just not, I mean, on the ground level, people just not understanding that fat shaming your co-worker is harassment. Having a conversation with, like I'm doing an intimacy scene with a co-actor, and if I tell the co-actor, yaar tu parathe hi kha rahi hai yaar subah se leke raat tak, even as a joke, it's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
But so all of this kind of fueled you to get set on the path that you're now
Oh
on?
yeah, because when I was watching all of this happen, and then I was like, but people that are actually industry stakeholders, people that have the possible opportunity of trying to find real solutions, are unable to find the real solutions around it. And at that point, mind you, I did not know that intimacy coordinators exist. So I came to know about what intimacy coordinators do and exist in the year 2020 when I started working on Gehraaiyan as Shakun's DA. We were just about to go on shoot we were going to shoot in Sri Lanka pre-COVID. Shakun just, in general, as he used to do with a lot of other articles, sent an article to me about an intimacy coordinator. He sent it to me saying, oh, look how the West is doing it. Maybe, and I was his DA, so he was like, maybe we can reach out to one of these people and check out if they have any tips on how we can do intimacy better. And I was just blown away by that one article. And so I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. It just felt like a calling. So I applied and got into training. And all of that stuff happened when we suddenly had gone into COVID and the film had gotten pushed for when it would be shot. I was like, ab to ghar pe hai yaar, 6 mahine. It's a sign. It was a sign when the person that I was in touch with, Amanda Blumenthal, is an intimacy coordinator, founder of Intimacy Professionals Association, based out of LA. So Amanda's done stuff like Euphoria and The Affair and How to Get Away with Murder and all of these other shows as an intimacy coordinator. So I reached out to her and I was like, bro, can you explain to me what intimacy coordinators do, and do you have any guidelines, do you have any processes? So then she told me, she said, we got to talking and she said, I really like chatting with you, I think you should do the training program. And I said, what training program? And she said, I have a training program, but it's probably going to be in October. Why don't you check it out on the website? And then she sent me the link and I was like, we'll finish shooting Gehraaiyan by then, so then I'll go and do this and take a break. So whatever money I earn on Gehraaiyan, I'll spend on educating myself. Then COVID happened, so shooting in March in Sri Lanka got canned because we all went into COVID lockdown, and then we were told that we have no idea when we're going to start up again. So at that point I was like, what am I going to do with my life in general? We were all just trying to figure out what is going to happen, right, at that point. And I got an email from Amanda saying she's decided that she's going to pull up her cohort for the year and not do it in October and do it now in March, because everyone's at home and can actually use this time to study and train.
Did it need to be remote, or did you need to be there?
So they did all of the lectures online, and then they said we're gonna do an in-person, 1 week in-person choreography thing, and then you come in for the retreat. So you come to the US and all of the theory and all of the writing of the exams and everything, we can move it online. So then that's what they did, and I spent all of COVID studying to become an intimacy coordinator. So before Gehraaiyan started shooting, I was already an IC.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Timing somehow
worked out. Yeah, it just worked out. Yeah. And that's kind of what pushed me. I mean, I always have to give Shakun credit for him being the one person that he always knew he could nudge me in a certain direction, and then I would just go in that direction, and I have to give him credit for it. But yeah, this entire idea of finding something that was a real solution was always something that was there at the back of my mind.
And you're also putting it to real world use now. You said something really interesting to me before we started talking, and I'd love for you to share that with everyone listening and watching.
In working with gender and sexuality and just how people express intimacy on camera, I learned and realized that there are a lot of taboos and a lot of unspoken subtopics associated with intimacy, which of course then in turn relate to how people experience intimacy in normal life. And so I decided to study with a company called the Somatica Institute, and I trained under them to become a sex and relationship coach. So that in the little time that I get off set, if there is anybody that requires any kind of help or guidance or coaching around figuring out gender, sexuality, identity, navigate something in their own relationships with the people that they're in relationships with or in intimacy, try and figure out, stuff like no sex toys work for me. Something as bizarre, like usually people are like, oh, you know what, no man or woman is working for you, use a sex toy. But like, what do you do when no sex toy works for you? Then where do you go? Like, what do you do about how you experience intimacy if you know you're hitting roadblocks in that space and have no one to talk to? And I've always felt like I'm a very sex positive person. I work very hard to practice constant empathy and to like find ways in which that I can de-shamify conversations around intimacy in any way that I become privy to a conversation. So I felt like I do that for work anyway, and then I might as well like study a little bit more so I can actually help real people. And so now I do that also, and yeah, hopefully something good is gonna come out of it.
No, more power to you for being able to like find time and do this and being able to find a real world impact to something that you've studied so closely and clearly feel very passionate about. The fact that you are sex positive, or the fact that you're so open about your journey, what drove you to coming here, and all of that is just awesome, because like I said, it's very intriguing to see someone in your place right now, because it's so new, and it's great to know that the generations after ours will hopefully grow up with this as a normalized factor to how things work. Yeah, but I have to ask you something spicy.
Ask.
What's the shittiest experience you've had while choreographing an intimate scene on set? Don't tell me who, that's fine. Just like, what's the shittiest experience where you were like, okay, this is not going down the way I imagined? So many you have to think through.
No, I'm trying to think what is the shittiest. There's one that's coming to mind, very like it's just popping out.
Just say it. It's a sign.
But yeah. Okay, so there was this one show I was working on. Big director, has worked on like one national award winning film, like huge ass director, okay. Very, very prudish and extremely patriarchal, like toxic masculinity to like no level. But very woke.
Please explain how you can be very patriarchal and toxic masculinity and then be very woke.
Because then you say very woke things.
You say woke things. You're not actually woke.
No. So you say, when you sit in a meeting, then you're saying very woke things.
You're saying the right things, but
you're saying all the right things. You're saying, I want the actors to be very comfortable. I want to shoot it very aesthetically. I want to make sure that this is not the main thing in the script. It's a part of the story. It's important to the story because this is the journey of their characters, and eventually this is the scene that culminates to the next season, and that is why this is the build up that we have been waiting for as an audience. So
I think I found my favorite segment on today's podcast.
So all of those things, and I'm just going, yes sir, awesome, really good, da la la, whatever. Yeah. So you do workshops with these actors and you figure it out and like whatever. And whatever they're comfortable with, I don't want to push anyone and all.
All the right things.
All the right things. Get to set. Most basic thing. Sir, close the set. There are 20 men on set. You're expecting 2 actors to perform a certain kind of way. There are 20 men on set.
Explain to people who don't know what a closed set is.
So usually a film set is like 50
I've never
people.
been this comfortable while sitting and filming a podcast.
Sit. So see, a normal film set is like easily 30-40 people are somewhere in the vicinity. Not necessarily in the island, but in the vicinity. There are 4 or 5 light dadas there. There will be some grip people there. People are just free flowing as long as they're not making sounds.
You're fine.
You're walking around set and it's fine. The actors are not that worried about doing their normal dialogue performances in having other people doing their job. So like your forward setups are going on, your art dadas and your costume dadas and everyone else are around. Not just dadas, didis also. Like it doesn't matter what gender.
But a closed set would be about how many people?
A closed set would be about 8 people.
Oh.
So that would be like easily like less than a fourth or a fifth of what would be a normal population on a film set.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that between action and cut, when you're doing things like intimacy, you don't want people to be staring at you.
Of course.
If you're doing nudity, more so. Yes, there is that logic that a lot of these makers have. That it is going to be on fucking Netflix. Like, what are you talking about? Not, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not live now.
But filming
And it's in a film that person has stripped. You have it. The audience can only see what is being seen on the camera, and also the audience can only see how much you're showing on the camera with the lighting, with the fixing, with all the everything, right? You can't expect for everybody to be just comfortable with having 500 people on set, because they will eventually be seen naked by 500,000 people.
So this person refused to have a close set.
Yeah, the director just refused to have a close set, and the reason he refused to have a conversation with me about it. That was the fuck up. Like, for me, that was the most irritating thing. Do not hire a collaborator if you are not comfortable with the job that they're coming to do. Nobody wants to feel like they're not wanted. It doesn't matter how much money you're giving them, right? Nobody wants to feel like they're not valued and why they've come, like you're not going to let them do their job, right? That's just the worst. Like, imagine a space where you were called in by a brand to do something and they just won't let you do your job.
How do you resolve that? Like, what's the solution?
Nothing. So I went to the first AD and I told the first AD, you need to close the set because I won't let you shoot until you close the set. And then the first AD came all up in my face. And I realized that he was able to do that because it was a top-down thing. The producer, the director, everybody there, this like full pack of men. Nobody wanted to put their foot down and be like, hey, you know what, this is just not okay.
Please tell me you won this situation and came
I won it as in I just walked out of set. I just said, you know what?
No, but when you walked out, but what happened?
I finished the scene as best as I could. Yeah, in a closed set. I finished the scene in a closed set. They were going to shoot another scene later in the day. I finished that scene. For that scene, the actors were uncomfortable with the kind of lighting that the director had chosen to do, because he'd floodlit an entire terrace. Not a terrace, like a balcony. He floodlit it in a way that it looked like a football stadium after promising the actors that he would shoot it in shadows and with like very aesthetic, very dim lighting. So in me explaining to the actors that you still need to light it to a certain extent so that you can crush it in post. Essentially, the technicality of it is that if you shoot it with a lot of light in the raw image, you can reduce the light in post, but you still get a lot of the detail.
Right. Versus shooting in
less light, in which case you're losing detail.
Right.
I was explaining that to the actors, but the actors were really uncomfortable with it. And the DOP and the director just turned around and said to me that you have to go and handle these people, because I'm not going to take an actor telling me how to light my scene, and I'm not going to take an actor. And the first AD did the same thing to me, and I said, you know what, as a first AD, you need to make sure that now that everything has been lit the way that it has been lit, that in other parts or areas of this particular set, that people are not just standing there in the shadow and watching this entire thing happen. And he was just like, I've never had an actor come up to me and tell me that they want to see what has been shot, or like they want to see what the final picture will look like. Like, who gives these people the right? And I was like, the fact that they're naked on screen gives them the right to at least have that conversation. Just no, there was just no resolve. These people were just not happy to bend. And I had that producer then come to me and tell me, I've done intimacy. I worked with this particular production house. I won't name it. You will know what the name is. We've been doing intimacy sex scenes for the last 20 years. We're the ones that have been doing intimacy in Indian cinema for so many years. Like, now you've come in and you think we don't know how to do our job. And I was like,
then why did you hire me? You should have been like, fine, if you knew what you were doing.
That's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. I said, you know what? I think you heard my name, or you heard what an intimacy coordinator does, but you don't know exactly what the job involves. So when you know what the job involves, and if you feel like you're going to let anybody do their job, then hire one. I'm out.
when they
Because
posted that scene, was it, sorry, I'm so curious to know, when they posted that scene that you're referring to, which was floodlit in a balcony setup, was it lit or did they actually stick to their word of being in the shadows?
It was still very lit. The show hasn't come out yet. But I know of certain people that have watched trailers of it, and an actor that I've worked with on several other projects after was a part of that body scene. So they told me that they got to see a trailer of it and were very, very, very uncomfortable by how it looked. And I was like, you know what? They in that moment felt comfortable. I did the job that I had to do. Now they've looked at something and they feel uncomfortable about it. It's up to them to go up to the maker and be like, what the hell did you do? Like, somebody has to put their foot down. And if they're not willing to put their foot down, then there's only a little bit I can do. I mean, in that moment, so there is always this conflict that I have. If I am going to stand up for the actors and I'm there for their consent, does that have to be in a trade-off for my comfort and consent?
Question of question.
Yeah. Because there are times that I'm uncomfortable being in a place because of the way that I'm being treated by certain people, and I work as the buffer to make sure that the
other two ends are fine.
That they're not getting the flack that these people are giving. So if I have to, which means that I have to like work on my resilience basket like mad. Like I have to take time off between shoots. I have to
go to therapy.
Do therapy. I have to. I need my community of other intimacy coordinators to go back and just vent about it, because a lot of people don't understand what we do. So they don't fully understand what it meant to have gone through what I went through. But at the same time, I've decided, and I did on that particular project itself, that it cannot be at the cost of my mental health. Because I can never be present and fully there for somebody else if I'm uncomfortable and I'm unhappy and I'm screaming and shouting and feeling like I'm not worthy enough to be here. And like if I'm being made to feel like that nobody respects my job or me or whatever, it just makes me uncomfortable to be in that position, and therefore I am actually of no use to anybody. So then in that situation, to respectfully be like, you know what,
I'm gonna back out of this situation.
Yeah, you keep your money.
Oh my god. Thank you for throwing so much light, first of all, on what it takes and what it means to be an intimacy director in the Indian landscape of cinema. I feel like it's a great start, and there's definitely so much more to go.
100%.
I feel like I definitely want to bring you back on the pod like 3 years from now and ask you how much has changed and what's been going on in the interim. But on a final note, do you want to tell us about any upcoming exciting projects that you have going on?
Yeah, actually, one is coming up on the 5th of May. It's called Saas Bahu or Flamingo. It's coming on Hotstar. It's Homi Adajania's web show, and both Homi and I think were very, very proud of the intimacy on the show. One that is also coming out, which is another Maddock Productions, is called Ji Karda on Amazon Prime, which is I think coming out in the next few months as well. So yeah, I've got quite a few releases back to back, which is great. I love when I get releases and like projects come out. Like most recently, when Class came out and all the kids got so much love for it, and I was just so happy to see that, you know, it was being received well. The intimacy got received so well. People were accepting just seeing school kids having sex, kissing, being naked, you know, even in the sense that they were like, this is not a world that they can relate to, but it was still a
aesthetically well done piece.
Also just the fact that, you know what, they're teenagers, and yes, of course they're exploring their identities, and of course they're exploring their bodies and each other's bodies and each other's identities and their sexuality and attraction and what have you, you know, right? Just generally all of those basic human things that happen to people in their adolescent and teenage and pre-adult years. It just felt like it was really well accepted. So I think a lot of the other stuff that I'm coming up with is also going to go well, hopefully. Yeah, I'm
I'm wishing you all the luck because I'm very excited to see what you do. Yours is a career I will be following very, very closely, I promise. And I'm going to wait till we stop recording to get the names of things that we've discussed here, hopefully.
What?
To get names from you.
Of what?
Of what we've
Oh,
discussed.
yeah, 100%. I will tell you of
the gap.
Okay, but we have to, but we have to manifest today. Because we were having this conversation prior to recording, so we have to manifest now that if in 3 years I'm coming back to this pod, by then at least one of the major film awards will have taken consideration as a technical award to add intimacy in.
We will all collectively manifest.
Let's manifest
because it's such a legit category. I'm not just saying this because you're on the pod. I feel like the fact that you bring that up, we were talking about this before we started recording even. It's such a legit category to be noted for, given credit to, and awarded, because it's a very tricky, clearly from everything you've shared with us, it's a very tricky space to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we're
No,
all
I also want a door stopper, yeah.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Yeah, but I want a door stopper, and for those reasons, please manifest.
You have my manifestation of the day coming right at you. But thank you for coming on the pod. Thank you for being as honest and like just so open with everything you shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a delightful conversation.
Thank you.